Hi everyone, this is Gail with Pretty Presets, and today I just wanted to highlight some of the ways that we can customize presets. Now, to start off, why might we need to customize a preset? Well, the truth is that presets are created to look good on lots of images. They're formulated based on images with a good exposure, but one preset can't account for every white balance setting, every lighting scenario, every different type of image that might come out of your camera. So when you place a preset on your image, it's meant as a starting point, and sometimes you might get a one-click finish, but many times you're probably going to need to adjust the preset to fit your image. So I wanted to show you today a few ways that you might do that, depending on what you need to do. So first of all, I want to just highlight that one of the best ways to customize a preset is to just use the basic panel and some really basic tools. So we're going to start with this image, and I want to apply Reverie. It's one of our most loved presets. And when I click this and apply it, Reverie, one click out of the camera, it doesn't look as good as I want it to. I can see that there are a few issues. Number one, I feel like her skin tones are just a little bit dark, and Reverie is really meant to bring in the shadows and kind of give a dark and moody look. But I feel like for this girl, there's a few too many shadows in her hair, and I just want to maybe brighten her up a tad. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just adjust some of the sliders in my basic panel. So for this one, I'm going to open up my shadows a little bit. And that's going to lighten a little bit of her because her hair, there's a lot of shadows that are in her hair and even a little bit in her skin. So I definitely want to do that. I don't think I'm going to adjust the exposure overall. I could play with that a little bit, but I kind of like and think that we're looking for a little bit darker effect on this image. But one thing that I'm not loving is I feel like her skin tone is a little bit too orange. And that could be, there are a few ways that we could fix this. We could maybe try to adjust our white balance. And one of my tricks for doing that is to use the eyedropper tool. Sometimes I zoom in depending on my subject, but then I hover over their eyes and look for a white balance that might work. I'm going to click here just so you can kind of see what happens. And you can see my image went quite green. One of the things that happened is that adjusted my temperature and tint sliders more towards the greens and the blue tones. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo because that's not exactly what I'm going for. But one thing I could do is that the tint slider is quite a bit towards the reds, and I could just bring that down a little bit and adjust that a tiny bit, and that could give me the result I'm looking for. I still think that her skin tones are a little bit too on the orangey side, and that is something that we run across with this preset fairly often. So I'm going to come up here, I'm going to click on my masking tool. It's the little circle with the dotted outlines. I'm going to click on Create New Mask, and I'm going to choose a radial gradient. I'm just going to drag a radial gradient over her skin tones here. You can see that the last preset I had chosen was eye and teeth whitener, and that's giving us a really lovely effect. Not what we want. But I'm going to come here and I'm going to go up and choose Pretty Cool Down because I want to cool the skin tones a little bit. And this is too much. That is not what I would do. So I'm maybe going to adjust this just slightly. Back up to maybe where it would be a little bit more normally. And maybe just remove the extra reds that it enabled. And somewhere around there I think is probably going to be about right. Now I might also just add a teeny bit of exposure to this. Just something really low because I don't want to take away from what we've already got here. But I feel like this If we look at our before and after, is a little bit more of what I'm going for. I feel like it's still pretty dark and moody, but the colors are a little bit better, and we don't have quite as much shadows here in her hair and skin tones. Anyway, so those are just a few little things. I've just tweaked a couple of things in the basic panel and added one radial filter and was able to adjust that to fit my image pretty well. So one of the other things that we run across a lot that people want to know how to edit in their presets is the matte effect. And I'm going to do that with this image. I'm going to come down here to a preset from the Film Bohemian collection. I'm going to choose Spirited, and it's a really pretty preset. I really like this, and there are a lot of things that I think we could do here. But when you want to adjust the matte effect of a preset, then we usually go to the tone curve. The tone curve is where you're going to see that. Now by default, most of the time, this is the curve that's going to be selected. We have several curves up here we can choose from, and this first one is the one that's going to be selected. And you might think, there's nothing going on there. But if we click over to the point curve, we can see that there are some significant changes being made here. And if we adjust these points on the ends, that's kind of where our matte effect is being created. And so if I come down here and we look at a before and now after, we've adjusted the matte effect. Now I could do this with a couple of different presets. Let's look at maybe Gossamer. Gossamer is another one that has quite a bit of matte effect. And you can see over here in the tone curve that we've got, some significant changes that have been made here. So I'm going to take this end dot and I'm going to click and drag it down a little bit closer to the corner, and however far you want to go, you can go all the way. I think I still want a little bit of it there, maybe just not quite as much. And so maybe just click right there. And let's just look at it before and after with that. Let's look at Gossamer straight as we applied it. And then let's look at the changes we made. And you can see that we've significantly reduced the matte effect for that image. So one other way that we can adjust a preset is through what used to be called split toning, but what now is called color grading. So if I come over here and I click on Innocence, okay, and then I come over here to the color grading, we're going to notice that there have been some tones applied to the shadows and highlights. And I actually wouldn't adjust this very much, but I do feel like maybe you could see when I click on these dots what it might look like without that color grading. So if I click and drag this dot more to where it's in the center, or maybe just come down here and turn it off altogether, you can kind of see what those colors apply to this image. So let's look at it without that, and then look at turning off the color grading, and you can see that this is just a little bit more, maybe a little bit more natural color, and that the Innocence adds a little bit of warmth and some slight red tones to the highlights here. So with color grading, basically you're allowing yourself to add a color to either the midtones, the shadows, or the highlights. And in this case, this preset is adding a little bit of color to the shadows and the highlights. And you can take that off by either just clicking on this eyeball here to see what it looks like without. And then if you like it better, then you can just move the circle back over to the middle, and then that turns it off, and you can see what it looks like without the color grading. And you can choose to remove that from any preset that you want. If you find that a preset is kind of giving your image maybe a color tone, you might look here. This might be where you want to make adjustments to that. So another way that we can adjust presets on an image are by using masks, and these used to be called more filters, brushes and filters, but in the newest version of Lightroom they're called masks. And they are a wonderful way that we can maybe adjust a certain portion of the image and not the whole image if we like something that a preset does. So I'm just going to show you how I might do that with this image. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to come to the Film Bohemian collection. I'm going to choose Calypso. And I actually really think this is a pretty preset, and it adds a nice effect. One thing I do want to adjust though, I'm going to adjust a couple of things in the basic panel really quick. I'm going to use that same trick that I showed you before, and I'm going to come over here and maybe just hover over the whites of her eyes and try to find maybe something a little bit, that's a little bit less red. Let's just click and see. We can always make some adjustments. After, I'm going to come up here and adjust my reds a little bit back to where they were, and then maybe just pull down my warmth just a touch and see where I like that. And I think that's really, I think we're getting into the realm of really pretty effect on this image. So then the next thing I want to do is maybe just add a little brightness to her face, just a little bit. And so I'm going to use, you can use really any of the filter or the brush tools. Okay, you can use any of the masking tools for this. I'm going to click on create a new mask, and I'm going to choose radial gradient, and then I'm just going to pull something over her face. And for me, I've got this set to apply whatever I last applied here. So again, we've got eye and teeth whitener, which is not what I want. I'm going to choose the Pretty Dodge. That's fine, that was right here. Okay, and that's maybe a tiny bit too much, and maybe I want to adjust this so it's just over more the left side of her face a little bit. I'm going to pull that over here, and then I'm going to reduce the effect just a little bit. And I think that's actually pretty nice right there. Maybe we did it a little bit too much. Perfect. But then another thing that I do on a lot of portraits is if you zoom in, I'm gonna make some adjustments to the eyes. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Let's come up here and choose create new mask. And I'm going to choose the brush. And now I'm going to change this to be just add clarity. And I do this over the eyes all the time. Let's move her a little bit more to the center. So I'm going to make my brush about the same size as her eye, and I'm just going to click and just add a little bit of clarity to her eye, and then I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller, and then I'm just going to go over her eyelashes, which I really like the little bit of clarity that adds to the eyelashes, and then maybe just over her eyebrows, especially if somebody has really light eyebrows, which I have several daughters that are pretty fair, and so I like to do that over their eyebrows just a little bit. And I'm going to click done. Let's zoom out, and we can look at a before and after and just see the changes that we've made with just a couple of clicks to make that preset just look really pretty on our image. And if you want to look at from when I applied the preset, let's just click Calypso. This is a little trick that you might see, but you can drag any of the layers from your history panel to be the before image that you would like. So here is just after I applied Calypso. And then with those couple little tweaks that we made, I feel like we made some really nice adjustments and give ourselves a really pretty effect on this image. So really, with just a couple of tweaks, you can really customize a preset to work perfectly on almost any image. And you only need to know a few little tricks to make them work for for each image that you want to apply. So hopefully this helps you learn how to customize presets on your image, and we'll talk to you later.